Welcome to Power Up Recovery with Nutrition. It is time to make nutrition part of the conversation. I'm your host, Christina Veselak, and I'm so glad you're here. Did you know that it's our brain's job to allow us to cope with stress gracefully? But to do that, it needs to be fed optimally. Have you ever wondered why so many committed people relapse or maybe even die? Why so many people on psychotropic medication still feel lousy and still have cravings? What if the missing piece is food, the right food? What if the right nutrients like amino acids or even eating protein every 4 hours could actually balance your brain chemistry and your mood without medication and support lasting recovery? In this podcast, we explore the powerful connection between feeding your brain well, mental health, relapse, and recovery from addiction. We will share insights from experts, inspiring recovery stories, and practical strategies you can use today. Whether you're in recovery, a healthcare professional, or someone passionate about emotional well being, this show is for you. Let's dive in and discover how fueling your body and brain with the right food, the right amino acids, and other key nutrients can fuel your transformation today. Welcome. Welcome to another episode of Power Up Recovery with Nutrition. I'm your host, Christina Veselak, and today we're diving into an incredibly important topic with a wonderful practitioner, Dr. Michele Perron. The topic is how to combine targeted naltrexone therapy with targeted amino acid therapy and dietary change. Michele, welcome.
Hi, Christina. Thanks for inviting me. I'm excited to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about what your background is and how you came to do both targeted naltrexone therapy and amino acid therapy?
Yeah, sure. I started as an alcohol and drug counselor 17 years ago, approximately. I worked in all levels of care from high intensity residential treatment, long term residential treatment, detox, adolescent care, telehealth, and now I'm working for myself. But with all that experience, I happened to be given a program to start and grow at the last job that I was at. So I took a one session group program and turned it into 10 groups and 10 counselors, and it ran for 8 years. And we had several hundred people go through it successfully, and it was all based on targeted naltrexone. So I was very lucky to have that moderation style
Mhm.
treatment protocol underneath the umbrella of traditional treatment with the agency I was working with. So I developed that over time, looking more and more at targeted naltrexone, how it worked, started networking and finding more information. And as I went, it was my clients who started talking about diet and exercise. And I always felt that was an important part that was vastly, poorly, sorely overlooked in all the
Mhm.
work I'd done in brick and mortar. And so I started looking into it. And then I started attending a Monday morning meeting and met one of the people who had gone through your training. And as I asked nutritional questions about amino acids, she said, "You have to go to the academy and find out more." So last spring, I went to the academy and started learning in your wonderful class, and it became the primary spearhead point to my treatment. It has changed my practice completely from just now targeted naltrexone to including the amino acids, right down to asking the very first question, what are you eating? Because even that can make a dramatic difference. And that has really catapulted the results of my clients, even the ones that I've been working with that were just doing the naltrexone therapy. Um, Now I start everybody with aminos as we talk about what their needs are and what their history has been. And it's been a game changing solution.
So it sounds like you've run across two game-changing solutions, both changing the way naltrexone has been typically used,
Yes.
as well as adding amino acid and feeding the brain optimally to it.
Yes. Yeah, the
Yeah.
first leg came when I started to learn about naltrexone, but there was a lot of non-compliance. It wasn't until I learned about, through Claudia Christian, the targeted naltrexone use, or the Sinclair method. It was the Sinclair method that demonstrated that if you took the naltrexone an hour before you did your drinking as usual, it would begin to reduce the stimulation and reduce the reward that you were getting from drinking, thereby leading to pharmacological extinction. So as I saw that in process, as I attended a lot of free groups, one of them being the tsmmeetup.com group, I would go and listen to people talk and listen to their results. And it was hugely different because they didn't have this punitive, I failed, I've relapsed again, my family's angry, I'll never get better. What I was hearing was, well, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing and I'm seeing improvements and things are getting better and my wife's on board or my husband's on board, or, I don't feel so terrible. And as I started to look at that, I also started to tap into my accreditation or my certification as an applied positive counselor as well. So I used applied positive psychology, changing the way I spoke about alcohol in conjunction with this targeted naltrexone. And everything was hunky-dory for a while, but I thought there's got to be more, because some people took a lot longer to feel better and have more energy than others. And I thought something's still missing. And it was that nutritional component, which was exactly what I was looking for with the amino acid therapy. Because I can now plainly see the importance of the serotonin connection with AUD, which that was not taught to me in all of the education that I received. That was not put forward as an important aspect of how the brain was functioning. Yet we were told about the amygdala and the reward system and all that.
Yeah,
but
we're taught about
the brain.
We're taught about dopamine, but we're not taught about the role that the other neurotransmitter systems play, the serotonin and the endorphins and even GABA. Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. And I used to teach theories of addiction in one of our local colleges here. And I taught 35 mechanisms of addiction. I had a book, I had all the stuff of all the different theories, and never one of them, even in the brain theory, did it include any of the neurotransmitters that are so vital to our daily function. I was like floored. So I'm very happy to have discovered this. I wish I found it 10 years ago, 17 years ago. Would have been so impactful.
Well, it's a little mind-blowing, especially since naltrexone was designed to work on a neurotransmitter system, actually several of them. Can you talk to that? The difference between sort of why naltrexone started being used, but why it doesn't work as well as it's supposed to, and in fact, some of the damage that can occur in terms of or from long-term naltrexone use?
Yeah, well, the way that it's put on this package, the way that it's prescribed today by a regular medical doctor, because they're trained to prescribe it the way it's suggested, evidence-based and all that. And they've done evidence-based studies on naltrexone daily in the morning. Unfortunately, when I saw people taking it daily in the morning, the compliance was abysmal, because what happens is they get flatline emotionally, because a reduction in dopamine long term means you're not also feeling very happy when you need to feel very happy, or feeling very relieved when you come out from shoveling snow and take a hot shower, or being outside on the farm, or getting dirty, or being outside and then coming back in the house when it's cold and warming up with a cup of cocoa or steak dinner. They weren't getting the rewards from regular healthy good activities, and so they would stop taking the medication and then they would relapse again. And compounded with that, this prolonged period of white knuckling to abstinence created the abstinence theory, right? The abstinence myth, where the longer you stay sober, the less you're going to want to drink. But in fact, that's not true, because it accumulates. The work of Adi Jaffe's, demonstrated that over the long term, if you don't drink, your cravings will actually increase, so that at some point, when you finally give in to those cravings, you'll overshoot and you'll drink way more than you intend, which is actually more dangerous the older we get. So I'm like, there's got to be some way around this. And that's where naltrexone targeted, using it later in the day, the hour to an hour and a half before you might want to drink. If you don't drink, that's fine. But if you drink, it's fine too, because it leads to this extinction session, which helps people drink less. but you're still, the next morning, you may not be hungover, but you're not happy either. And that's where the aminos come in.
That's right. And I think this is what a lot of people don't understand about naltrexone is that it blocks the dopamine receptors
It does.
and also the endorphin receptors, doesn't it?
Yes, the endorphin receptors as well. And what I like to say to clients for lay people, it's easier to remember. I said, naltrexone's like a condom for the brain. It covers your receptors, so don't have unprotected drinking. And they laugh like you're laughing, but they remember that. It sticks
Yes.
with them. And then they realize, oh, I have to protect myself when I'm drinking. It becomes
Right.
prophylactic, to use the word,
Mhm.
right?
But the problem with that long term is that we actually need active dopamine receptors. We
We do.
need active endorphin receptors for our long-term quality of life because it
And
gives us joy
yeah,
and motivation
personality.
and drive and personality and a reason to keep on living.
Yes. Yes, I once had a client who was a psychiatrist who came in and he was doing naltrexone. He was prescribed every morning naltrexone, and he was in the group. And over time, as he heard other people talk, he finally asked me one day, "Do I need to take this? You know, do I need to?" Oh, I said, "How are you feeling?" And he was pretty flatline, and he was newly married, and his wife wasn't too happy with that. And I
Mm.
suggested he took it later in the day because he had heard other people in the group who took it later in the day. So after about a week, he came back and he said, "Do I need to take this every day?" And I said, "Well, you can because it can help with cravings, but you don't have to. You can just take it on the days that you drink." So he tried that for the following day, which is the way that I support it in my coaching practice. And he came back the following week. His personality had changed. He was bubbly. He was pleasant. He was like more humorous. He was night and day. I had to pull him aside and say, "Have you been drinking?" He said, "No, this is who I am. My wife is so much happier because of myself again." And yeah,
Well,
dramatic.
this is really interesting because it's like naltrexone causes what we call reward deficiency syndrome. And according to Dr. Blum, who's one of the researchers who discovered reward deficiency syndrome, this has to do with all of the different blocks in all of our neurotransmitter systems that block dopamine in the nucleus accumbens, in the pleasure reward center of the brain, leading to gray from day one, leading to a lack of joy, a lack of life, a lack of reward, a lack of everything that makes life worth living. It's like, living in shades of gray rather than color and life.
Yeah.
And that when people discovered the mood altering substance to improve the function of that particular neurotransmitter system, all of a sudden we've moved from black and white TV to color TV.
Yes, absolutely. And when
And
clients are,
naltrexone turns this backwards.
yeah, naltrexone turns it backwards, but it doesn't replete the neurotransmitters. It does a
Right.
great job to not stimulate that release of neurotransmitters. You don't feel that release so that you're not over rewarded when you do drink, but it doesn't come back because so many people start drinking because of the serotonin depletion, because they
Right.
don't feel happy. And and maybe their dopamine might be depleted as well. Typically it is. But when they start drinking, that alleviates that blah, that feeling sad, that irritability, that
Worry.
negativity, right? And
With
so
the worry and anxiety. A lot
that,
of
oh,
people drink with
absolutely.
worry and anxiety, which is low serotonin.
I have yet to meet a person who has AUD that does not have anxiety. So when we use naltrexone, then it can cover that reward. I have a client now who said, "Well, I take the naltrexone, but I'm not getting the hit that I want when I'm not getting the buzz that I want when I'm drinking." I'm like, "Well, it's doing its job." So we have to look then in another direction, which I never had before, and that's to improve your neurotransmitters. So when you're not using naltrexone, for instance, if you're using it daily, it usually has a metabolic half-life of about anywhere from 4 to 13 hours, depending on which receptor it's approaching. So we say about 6 hours for it to metabolize off the receptors. Your body will go on. So it doesn't keep you down if you're not using it every day. If you're using it every day, it will work most intensely for the first 6 hours. Then after that, you can drink through the naltrexone, or you're going to fall asleep. A lot of people do. But the next morning, there's not that serotonin depletion is still there. There's nothing kicking that back up so that you feel great in the morning and you feel proud that you didn't drink as much last night. And wow, I feel energetic and I want to go to work and I'm no longer depressed and I'm not anxious. That part is not addressed.
Right, because the dopamine is still
Yeah,
repressed from the naltrexone. The
yeah.
endorphins are still suppressed from the naltrexone, which is cumulative.
Mhm.
And so people continue to lose their joy in life.
Yes, and joy in drinking, which was usually their one respite, right?
Yeah.
And joy in life in general. So the daily use of naltrexone really shows that up, and that's why people usually quit using naltrexone when they take it every day in the morning.
Okay. Okay. So by combining amino acid therapy with naltrexone, you're getting the immediate extinction of reward from the alcohol use, but it's not lasting. You're using the amino acids to rebuild dopamine because we use tyrosine to rebuild dopamine, and we use 5-HTP to rebuild serotonin, and we use the dephenylalanine to keep the endorphins in the synapse longer, right?
Yep.
On and on. And so we're now actually getting down to the nitty gritty, the actual biochemical molecular reasons in the brain as to why people seek a mood altering behavior or chemical to feel better.
Yeah, yeah,
And the miracle of amino acids is that we can do that without a mood altering substance.
yes,
They are mood altering in that they are rebuilding neurotransmitter systems rather than depleting it. So they're actually anti addictive. Isn't that amazing that amino
yeah,
acids that you can buy over the counter are anti addictive and yet work within 20 minutes?
yeah. And what I'm seeing with clients is for the longest time, I was working with just a targeted naltrexone, and while they'd be happy that they weren't drinking as much, they still had this lower cruising level for their sense of well-being. They were languishing, is what we would say in positive psychology. They were not thriving. They were
Mhm.
languishing. But when I started adding the amino acids into the mix, where in the morning they could get up, take their aminos, and then start to have a more productive day and feel less moody throughout the day and start actually changing the way they're looking at things. And that's what I work on as well, the behavioral and the
Mhm.
attitudinal portions of
Sure.
addiction alongside of these two therapies. All of a sudden, when they're getting up in the morning, they're excited. They're not just, yeah, I did good, ho hum. They're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go do this today. And I started doing that today. And I didn't realize how asleep I was. And I didn't realize that how much better I could feel. And I'm thinking about doing the things I used to do again. Like the energy starts to come back and really quickly and just they're almost like a new person. It's so dramatic. I wish I could film them.
Mm. Maybe you could ask them, well, one or two clients to film them. That would be really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about now diet change? Because you mentioned dietary change. How does that fit into all of this?
Oh, when I started asking the question, what are you eating? I I had no idea because that wasn't a question I was trained to ask as an alcohol and drug counselor. That's
Right.
not a question, right?
No,
So
I'm
as I
not.
started to ask, which is so fundamental to our well-being, and so when I started to ask that question, I found out that grown adults are eating Doritos and Coca-Cola for breakfast. Grown adults are having frosted mini wheats and coffee, and they're
Yeah.
having just cookies and donuts and danishes, and then at lunch they might have a sandwich that's a croissant or like heavy carb laden meals, and
Right.
and the protein is paltry. It's
Mhm.
terrible.
Mhm. Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
yeah. So that was one of the most eye-opening things I learned, that people are not eating like maybe I eat, because I went keto several years ago, and so protein has been a big part of my life. So as I started asking them, and then I just the simplest of instruction is please eat 15 to 20 grams, if it's a man, 25 grams 4 times a day, at least every 4 hours or so. So 3, 4 times a day, get your protein in. That in itself was a turnaround. Like, oh,
Yeah.
now I eat, so people will eat eggs, or they'll eat bacon, or they'll have some leftover pot roast from last night, or those sorts of things,
Mhm.
which makes
Mhm.
all the difference. So we look at that. We look at what are you eating primarily, what's your protein intake, and then we start looking at the junk food and the sugary drinks and all that. And how do we start changing that. Now, I'm a big proponent of carbonated water. I love carbonation. And I realized my addiction to maybe 7-Up at one time was because of the carbonation. And when I took the sugar out and just did carbonation, and you can sweeten that however you like, you can add a little juice, then it becomes your substitute pop or soda. And that was huge. So I'm really big on having people become mixologists themselves with soda water, make it flavored in a way that you enjoy it without all that sugar. And a lot of people have gone to that. And incidentally, O blood types do better with carbonation, I learned in the 5-star recovery diet. And so I'm an O blood type, and no wonder I love it. I probably drink a liter a day with meals and with vinegar in it. I like red wine vinegar in soda water, which is a great digestive. And it's a little sweeter than apple cider vinegar, and it's a little less harsh, and it's nice. So a lot of clients get turned on to that. A little raspberry shrub in there, and you've got your own kombucha right away. So it's learning to be open to dietary changes that aren't limiting, but adding into your diet so that you see how good you feel and you prefer it. And then over time, it minimizes down. A lot of people like chocolate. So what kind of chocolate are you going to be eating? Is it quality? Does it have sugar, or is it sweetened with stevia? There are a lot of options now that are stevia sweetened chocolate that are perfectly good. So it helps that way. So we're looking at snacks, we're looking at meals, and digestion is part of it.
And you were talking about habit change. A lot of people who drink in the evening, drink throughout the evening, are attached or emotionally attached to having something enjoyable to actually drink, right?
Yeah.
This
It's that
hand-mouth
hand
motion.
Yes.
Exactly. And to find a alternative to drink that is enjoyable, that is relaxing, that is fun, rather than just the alcohol, right? Because we can't just take something away from somebody and leave a void. We
They have to
have
have a
to,
stimulating in their something interesting and stimulating to their palate, because the addicted brain loves variety and novelty. So new and different, right? So I always steer clients towards new and different. Try something new, try something different. Try this, try that. One of the big savers is a mojito flavored kombucha, which is alcohol free, but it's mojito flavored. So it's kind of like a mixed drink, and it can be very palatable and enjoyable, and clients can sometimes go to that. Now, it's not like stop drinking. It's not this white knuckling business anymore. It's interspersed. Like if you start with a big glass of water because you're likely hydrated, and then have a glass of wine, and then maybe try one of your mixology, alcohol-free interesting drinks, and then maybe after that you'll have another glass of wine, and by then it'll be 9:30 at night. Then it's time for bed, right? Get a good night's sleep. And so as you give people drinking windows, this is those little tips and tricks. Every other drink's alcoholic. Start drinking later, make curfew at the end. If they plan their drinking, that can be a game changer. The problem is we all started to learn to drink by let's go. We have a let her rip mentality when it comes to our drinking. All of us learned how to start a party, not how to finish it. So I focus on what mindset do we need going in, and how do we finish it on a peak end experience, so that we learn how to end the party and still have had a great time and not go home worried about how I'm getting home or who I'm going home with. It just becomes an enjoyable social activity. I say the point of social drinking is to be social first.
And so it sounds like, what I was taught, many of us as outcome use disorder counselors were taught, is that for people to stop drinking, they actually have to go for complete 100% abstinence,
Yes.
or it will trigger this kind of out of control process.
Yes. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, right?
Right.
And
so some of what you're saying kind of flies in the face of that.
it does. It does. And I would never have projected that I'd be sitting here, 16, 17 years into my career, changing lanes. If I had colleagues saying, don't you think you're doing malpractice? It's like you need to sit in these shoes that have done group after group after group therapeutically, as well as attended groups as a listener to learn and to see the difference. It's not punitive. It's not, I'm a failure. There's no guilt. There's no shame. It becomes like universal knowledge. And I start just about every group that way by saying, if you've ever had the opportunity to have a drink and you've enjoyed it, you've likely had the opportunity to overdrink. Like just about everyone who likes to drink has had the opportunity to overdrink. And so
Mhm.
it's the nature of alcohol. It's not just human willpower. It's the nature of alcohol to get us addicted to it. That's what it does. And if you really like it, it will take over a life of its own, yours. Right? That's what
Now,
happens.
are you familiar with the three different types of alcohol use disorder that Joan Matthew Larson talks about in her book, 7 Weeks to Sobriety?
The biotypes, is that what
The
you're
different
referring to?
biotypes.
Yes.
And we've got the THIQs where we have extended phase 2 detoxification in the brain, leading to more of these opioids, or in the liver that lead to opioid growth in the brain. Your people who are allergic to alcohol and can get a craving, if they even use an alcohol-based hairspray,
Yep.
versus people who, when they stop drinking, get very, very depressed because they're not making a certain antidepressant brain chemical. Have you noticed any of those playing out with your work with Naltrexone?
So many of the people that use naltrexone successfully and then now get on the amino acids are THIQ. They're what I call power drinkers.
Uh-huh.
They can outdrink everybody else and get up the next morning and mow the lawn and pack the car and go canoeing all day long. And while everyone else might be wiped out and tired or hungover, these power drinkers are definitely, they seem to be the ones that correlate just anecdotally in my practice with good responders to naltrexone with little to no side effects from it. And they respond well to that treatment. And so adding in the amino acids with that, it brings them up, which is where they like to be anyway, without the adverse effects of alcohol in their lives.
Sure,
Yeah, so
sure.
that one I've noticed for sure. I haven't come across too many people with like the essential fatty acid type or the allergy type. It might just be anecdotal, but it seems to be those are the people who are drinking so much in excess. I just spoke with a man who's drinking a fifth of vodka every 2 days,
Hmm.
a handle every 3 days. Yeah, so that's what I've discovered is that there seems to be a more prevalent um, type
Mm.
that is THIQ, the power drinkers respond well. And
Okay.
of course, when it comes to naltrexone, it's effective for approximately 85% of people who try it. And
Mm.
they are correlating that with some receptors, but it's not super clear yet exactly how and when, and we don't test for different receptors in people to know if it's going to be the best treatment for them.
Sure. So it might be that 15% for whom it doesn't work so well may be these other two biotypes, either the allergic
Yes.
type or the GLA deficient type.
And for them, there are other targeted types of um, medications they can take as well. So the secondary one that is often gone to, and there's more and more research being done right now with it, and that's on Dansitron. And oddly enough, it's at low dose. So they're talking about using the pediatric drops twice a day with on Dansitron rather
That,
than higher
that's
doses.
interesting.
Yeah.
But since we found that borage oil or evening primrose oil does such an amazing job turning off the depression in that group of people, it becomes so much easier for people to stop drinking because they don't need it anymore to manage the depression because it's
Yeah.
being managed by adding this very simple nutrient.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
there's so much information out here that so many people don't know.
Should be standard operating training procedure now. Like now, I mean, we know this. This is given. You've had years learning this and trying to get the message out that eating protein saves lives. And the fact that I only like basically stumbled upon this last spring and it's been so dramatically game changing to my practice, it should be standard practice for all alcohol and drug counselors to learn at least to where to even refer someone to for that information or put them onto that information because it's basic to tell someone eat more protein. What are you eating? Eat more protein. That's an ordinary conversation and easy to suggest, bacon and eggs for breakfast or a protein shake, or it's not
And
hard
it's
to
so
do that.
easy. And it's such a game changer. And it should be within the scope of practice of every addiction counselor and every psychotherapist for that matter. And this is exactly why, I started the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition, exactly why we're doing this podcast, and exactly why we're doing the conference, Feed the Recovering Brain,
Yes.
in Columbus, in May 2025, to
Yes.
get this word out to more and more people. And Michele, I'm delighted that you're going to be speaking at that conference.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. There's a wonderful lineup. I feel honored to be one of the speakers there and excited to meet the others that will be there and the attendees and whoever's going to be watching online. I think they're going to get more than their money's worth, especially if this is your field of practice,
Yeah,
especially if you're interested in outside the box therapies that work better than, business as usual and really
right.
help people feel better and feel proud of themselves. And I had a
Yeah,
client once remark that in the moderation groups, people didn't get divorced and they stopped arguing. And it wasn't a shame, blame, nasty game. It was let's work together, let's get on the same page. I understand what you're doing. There are certain questions that we allow, without getting upset. Our loved ones can ask particular questions, and we have to take in the spirit of love and concern, not picking on us. And then the other thing is reducing the number of arguments and relationships. All those things, those are part of the things that I teach my clients when I'm working with them. So that's a holistic approach, which is
yes.
exactly where I want to be. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on putting all of this together.
Oh, I'm so excited. I feel it's serendipity. I just lucked out here.
Now, one final question before we close, and that is, what research have you run across
Well,
around combining amino acids with naltrexone?
yeah. Interesting that you asked that. Like everyone else, I've been playing with Chat GPT and Grok and looking at what is compiled out there, searching the internet and seeing what it'll come up with. And both of those sources of AI, when I asked the question of combining these two therapies, they said there's really not much research on it, but called it the most promising area of recovery in AUD in the near future. And they look and they say that they recommend that more research be done, but that these two would optimize the brain's functioning as well as, extinguishing the desire for alcohol and improving the neurotransmitters. The two together appear to be the perfect storm. So I'm really excited.
Wonderful. That is so good to know. Anything else before we close?
Oh, I look forward to the conference that's coming up, the summit in May, and I look forward to learning more. And I feel so very blessed that I learned about the academy and was able to participate in the classes. And it's just been just an eye-opening experience. So thank you so much, Christina, for all you do.
You are so welcome. Finally, Michele, if people want to reach you, how might they do that?
Oh, easy. I have a website and you can send me an email there, or you can actually sign up for any kind of appointment you would like. It's all automated. So you can find me at Dr. Michele Perron. That's DrMichelePerron.com. Or you can look me up on LinkedIn. I'm available there. I'm in Psychology Today. And also on the directory for Thrive Alcohol
Mm,
Recovery. And I'm in a directory for Choose Your Horizons. That's another company out of California. So I have lots of leaders, but you can schedule yourself on my calendar or send me a quick email and I can get back to you as well. So there's lots
that's
of,
wonderful. And you're also in the directory for the Academy for Addiction and Mental Health Nutrition.
and I'm also working on an app that people will be able to carry in their pocket that will work on
Ah,
these two premises of the combined naltrexone and amino acid therapy. And it's called Splashed, not Smashed, so that people are not getting intoxicated, but instead they can just enjoy a little bit of their favorite beverage.
that's amazing. And when will that be available, Michele?
Well, it depends on how brave I get to do all the videos, but hopefully by the end of January, I'll start launching that. Yeah.
What a brilliant idea. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I hope to have some really good information for the summit from that as well.
I'm sure you will. So if you want to reach Michele, You can, or if you have clients that you want to refer to her or just ask questions, you know where to reach her. And thank you all for listening to this podcast and this wonderful conversation. And I think the takeaways are there's more than one way to recovery. We get to combine so many wonderful tools, the eating protein every 4 hours, the using amino acid therapy, the using the targeted naltrexone just when needed in very specific ways to protect those receptors and to buy us time and to extinguish the conditioned craving for some of these substances, and in this case, alcohol. So I look forward to having all of you listen to this podcast again and come to our wonderfully planned conference in May 2025, or attending it virtually or buying the recording. Thank you so much. And thank you, Michele. Thank you for tuning in to Power Up Recovery with Nutrition. I'm Christina Veselak, your host, and I hope today's episode has inspired and equipped you with new insights and tools to support your recovery journey or practice. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others who could benefit from the knowledge shared here. Stay connected with us for more episodes filled with practical advice, expert wisdom, and inspiring recovery stories. Remember, nutrition is a powerful tool in mental health and relapse prevention. Power up your recovery today. I'm Christina Veselak, and I'll see you next time.